Local Mounties felt pressured by the RCMP commissioner to release details about the weapons used. An officer's note, State Commissioner Brenda Lucki promised the government to release the details in an effort to advance their gun legislation. The feds deny those allegations, but the opposition is calling for an investigation. Mark Holland is the government's House Leader. Hi, Minister Holland. Good to see you and good to have you in studio.
Thanks so much for having me here.
I appreciate you making the time. I have a lot to ask you about the structure of Parliament, what it's going to look like going forward, but I do have to start off on an issue that has dominated the discourse within the House of Commons over the past few days, and that is what's happening with the RCMP and more specifically with the inquiry into the 2020 mass shooting in Nova Scotia. Your government has explicitly denied what is being alleged by a superintendent there, insofar as the commissioner of the RCMP said that she had made a promise to the Prime Minister's office, to the Minister of Justice, to essentially help advance gun control legislation by ensuring there was full disclosure of what guns were used in that mass shooting, almost like an instruction or direction had been given. I know your government says no direction has been given, no pressure was applied. Is your government saying that the superintendent who produced those notes is lying?
Well, I mean, first of all, let's say that the tragedy that occurred in Nova Scotia was terrible and heart-wrenching for the entire nation, and certainly particularly for people who were affected, the victims of that terrible tragedy. And I don't know, of course, what conversations took place between the commissioner and her subordinates, but the Prime Minister and the Minister have been very clear. There was no undue influence that was placed. There is a firm wall that exists between policing and government. That has been respected at all times. The Commissioner's own statement made that very clear as well.
I guess, though, is there room for gray? Because it seems as though nobody is denying that a conversation took place. I think your government's interpretation is that wasn't trying to exert undue influence. Can you understand how the public's perception would be, though, if there is any kind of invocation of, for example, upcoming gun legislation in a conversation around the disclosure of what happened in a terrible tragedy, that could leave Canadians with the impression that, in fact, your government was trying to exert that, even if you insist that wasn't the case, that wasn't the intent?
Sure. Well, I mean, look, let me be clear. I'm the House Leader. I speak in that capacity. And I listen to what the Minister has said and what the Prime Minister has said, and they've made it very clear that there was not undue influence. The Minister has a long career in policing. He was the Chief of Police and as a police officer, and has made those statements. I think those are clear. The conversations that took place between the Commissioner and her subordinate are not something we would know. But obviously, the Commissioner has also made a statement saying that there was not political interference. So there's been very clear statements in question period and outside of question period, and I think they speak for themselves.
I understand your point that they speak for themselves, but I sort of put myself in the seats of Canadians who are watching and hear that and then read the notes that were produced in that inquiry, and they are contradictory, right? I understand the point your government's making, but is that I mean, this is a superintendent. He's a high-level RCMP officer. I read in the Globe this morning, you know, the former RCMP Commissioner Bob Paulson, P.Y. Bourgeois, all saying he's a person of good character, that he wouldn't kind of make it up from scratch. Is essentially what your government's saying, like this is a different interpretation of events?
Well, what I'm saying is, as House Leader, I've given you the best answer that I can. Obviously, I think having the Minister to ask more questions or go deeper as the Minister. But
I would love to. He's unfortunately denied our request for an interview.
Well, I mean, look, he's made his statements very clear in the House. He's spoken extensively to reporters scrumming every day on this issue, answered many questions. And I've said to you, and I'll say again, that the statements have been unequivocal and clear, both from the Commissioner, the Minister, and the Prime Minister.
John Brassard is the Conservatives' House Leader. Peter Julian is the House Leader for the NDP. They're both here in studio. The fact that the Public Safety Committee will be meeting and it looks like we'll conduct an investigation into what's being alleged, is that the appropriate way to deal with this? And, you know, if you do hear from the superintendent that perhaps he made a mistake or the interpretation was different, are you open to the idea that it could have been?
Look, by all accounts, this is a professional police officer who took meticulous notes. There is no reason to believe somebody's lying in this situation. I don't believe it's the Superintendent Campbell. I believe that he was being pressured. There were other people in that room. There were other RCMP officers who will be able to corroborate that story. Somebody's lying. I don't think it's Darren Campbell. I think it is either Brenda Lucki, the Prime Minister's office, or the former Minister of Public Safety. We need to get to the bottom of it, and I think the committee's going to be charged with that.
Mr. Julian, do you think the committee's the right place to investigate this?
Absolutely, that's the next step. The families of the murdered in Nova Scotia absolutely deserve
100%.
answers. Alistair McGregor, our public safety critic, pushed for that full-day hearing that'll be on July 25th here in Ottawa, just after the blackout period. And the minister will be convened, the commissioner, and I hope that those families and all Canadians get answers.
Okay, we'll certainly follow that. I do appreciate you both making the time for the conversation tonight, John Brassard and Peter Julian. Thank you to both of you.
Always great to be with you.